everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sitting Down with Scholars. I'm joined by Dr. Tim. And Tim, can you start off by telling myself and my guests a little bit about your career and research thus far?
All right, thank you, Jordan. All right, so I'm an early career researcher, and essentially, early career researchers are 5 years and below in the research post PhD phase. So I would say that so far so good. I've had a pretty independent research career, starting from my PhD. It was a self-designed PhD.
Hmm.
Yeah, although I was kind of like I pursued it within a CDT that has a very constructed system where you have supervisors with projects and you just kind of like join a lab. But I decided to be independent, and that involved me, liaising with organizations, doing a lot of networking, and essentially just preparing myself for the post-PhD phase. So PhD was, I mean, the research phase lasted for about 3 years, and currently I am a research fellow at Canterbury Christchurch University. And I'm also going to be pursuing a fellowship starting from January at the Open University. But I want to say that my research career backdates to probably my master's because my master's was a master's in research and I did a lot of lab work. It was, I have, well, yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's all about me.
Okay, so to start off with, for those who might not be as aware, obviously, if you pursued an independent PhD, typically my PhD experience was there was a project that was advertised. I applied for that project, but it was someone else's grant effectively. They had applied for enough of a pot of money and they had space for a PhD student, and that PhD student was me. But from an independent PhD point of view, that would be securing funding, approaching supervisors, approaching labs, and getting taken on in that respect. And starting independently can be something that a lot of people are interested in, but can often be a bit different than the typical projects or more modes of study that a traditional PhD might take the route of.
Exactly, exactly. You said it all like very clearly. It was, I think unlike some universities in different countries, especially from Africa where I come from, where you will start that independence from the get-go, in the sense that you just, you're interested in that uni, you apply and you do all the looking for supervisors and stuff like that. In the UK, it's a little bit easier in the sense that my PhD was with the Center for Doctoral Training. So there was already a
Mhm.
structure. I already had funding. I don't, you understand? So it wasn't that as I entered the CDT, I just started I chose to pursue the independent route, but it was easier compared to just in case we have people listening from other countries who might be wondering, yeah, that's the kind of structure in the UK.
I suppose the other thing that I would love to know a bit more about is what was your PhD in and what was your research focus?
Yeah, so my PhD was in digital health and care, and essentially I spent 3 years designing culturally sensitive collaborative technologies for type 2 diabetes in Nigeria. My background, I'm a pharmacist. I pivoted into social science, did a master's in healthcare management, but a research-based master's, and then came into digital health, but like focused in computer science, human computer interaction. You can see how multidisciplinary my background is. So in my PhD, I try to like show a connection between all of these things by like, for example, my participants were mostly pharmacists and caregivers with people with type 2 diabetes. I did a lot of liaising with local community pharmacists and just kind of like because essentially I'm a pharmacist, right? And
Mhm.
also my literature and the research gaps also showed a significant gap when it came to collaborative type 2 diabetes care technologies and the role that pharmacists have to play in their design, right? So essentially that's what I did in my PhD. It was a three-phase project. I did a lot of interviews, design workshops. Obviously I had to upskill when it came to like computer programming and designing. And so at the end of everything, I had a prototype which I evaluated with participants again. And the in the nutshell, the idea was in as much as I had like a final artifact, like, oh, this is an intervention that could be used for collaborative type 2 diabetes care. the idea was to also find out what were the insights I could generate by interacting with people from low resource settings in a very under researched area in Nigeria. So by interacting with these people, there was a lot of contributions that I made when it came to this is how we can develop technologies from a culturally sensitive perspective for Africans, and this is how we can evaluate them in both Africa and in more developed regions. So it was a very extensive PhD. And just to wrap up the question you asked, I had like three main contributions. I had an artifact contribution, obviously, as I just said, the artifacts that I designed. I had empirical contributions on, this is how type 2 diabetes is happening, this is the scope of type 2 diabetes care and all of that. And then I also had a methodological contribution because I played around with using off-the-shelf tools like WhatsApp, for example, in data collection with a mind of with the perspective of making research more accessible and easier to navigate, considering the fact that I was engaging with participants that were distributed in different parts of Nigeria, and I am here in the UK.
And like you say, and equally, it's going to the channels. I know from doing more qualitative research myself that often it can be a challenge just getting people who are in the same building to engage with any form of research in that way. So going internationally, different time zones, and equally different communities who might not necessarily typically engage with research,
Exactly.
it can be I can well imagine and greatly sympathize with and imagine the challenge that it was to get that. But yeah, what really drove you down this pathway? Because, like you say, if your background was in being a pharmacist, so what led you down digital health and to take the path that you have done?
All right. So essentially, I'd always known that I wanted to be an academic, but I was good in a lot of things. Like I dipped my toes in every single course that I tried, I was good at it. So initially, I didn't even want to be a pharmacist to start with. I wanted to be a medical doctor, but it
Mhm.
just happened that I studied pharmacy. I had the option to choose between pharmacy and geography, and I was like, and geology rather. And I just thought about the long-term trajectory of my career, and I was like, let me just stay in the health field, right? And by staying in pharmacy, I fell in love with the course, but most importantly, the clinical aspects of things when it came to like managing healthcare institutions, at that time in a pharmacy setting, the pharmaceutical care setting, and also when it came to the management of chronic conditions and when I graduated, I worked for a couple of years. I worked in both hospital settings and community pharmacy settings, so I got real life experience, and by real life experience I also recognized some gaps by that when it comes to access to care, managing managing clinical pharmacy departments and things like that. So I was at that particular point in time, in as much as I knew that okay, I wanted to pursue academia, I was like, okay, I think I want to know how to manage, institutions better. And that's what led me to healthcare management. And while I was pursuing my degree in healthcare management, I was also working as a research assistant. And that was the time where there was this tech, you know, I
Mm.
suddenly became more aware of, the gaps in practice that could have been resolved using technology. And then I had some friends that were studying management information systems, and I started hearing about things like health informatics. And I suddenly felt like, oh my God, maybe I should have studied that instead, right? So I actually went to apply for a master's degree again in computer science. And I computer science, health informatics, and MIS because I thought that in order for me to bridge into digital health, which I didn't know it was digital health, I just knew I wanted to do something in health and technology.
Mm.
I thought that I needed to get another master's, right? Until I saw the advert for the CDT, Digital Health and Care online. I stumbled on it. I wasn't intentionally looking for it because at that time I didn't know much about digital health. And somehow it coincided with the COVID-19 phase. So there was this, we started hearing about applications. and all those how can we design mobile apps? There was just this interest. Social media was even popping more at that time. And so those were the kind of adverts I was now seeing online. So I did shoot my shot and I was part of the eight students that were selected from all over the world to be a part of the cohort. And yeah, that's how I found myself in it. In my first year, my idea was, okay, I'm in academia, I'm pursuing my PhD. Maybe how am I going to make this work? Because I still had the dream of managing institutions. I still had the dream of studying. But over time, I realized that I don't have to pick and choose because if I am pursuing an independent research career where I'm managing my own project, I can make it whatever I want it to be and still make an impact. So that's how it's worked
Mhm.
for me. I didn't know what I was doing from the get-go.
I think it's interesting. I think it parallels a lot of other people that I've spoken to on this platform on this podcast. How many different people go, I'm pursuing a PhD, they're pursuing a very specialized subject, and then equally still don't necessarily know where they're going to end up with it, myself included, and I'm sure other people as well, where you are still learning, still growing, still changing as an academic or as a scholar, whatever route you pursue. And I think that is such a true statement for so many people in academia. And for any student who's listening to this, who's thinking, oh, you must have your shit together. You do not have your shit together by the time you get to the PhD. You are still learning what is the path that you're pursuing. And some of that can be trial and error. I'm sure you've had experiences, I've had experiences where it's like, no, that is not for me. And sometimes that's just as valuable as what is for you.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Thinking a bit more about, so that's, we've covered what really direction you pursued, but I want to touch on the who, the side that's who's helped make Dr. Tim and what led you that way by who's inspired you to be who you are,
All right.
if there is anyone.
There's a popular saying where they say it takes a community to raise a child or a village to raise a child. There's
Hmm.
a saying like that. I can't say who. I would say there's been a lot of people, honestly speaking, who have contributed to who I am right now. And that backdates to pharmacy school. I was an overly enthusiastic student. I just love to learn. And that also attracted some negative vibes because there are students that were like, why do you like to like, because of you, they're giving us extra assignments and things like that. But the advantage was that it made me closer to lecturers in a way. And then I became like a course rep and a lot of things. And by virtue of being close to some of them, they would just talk to me, right? And I was getting mentorship without even knowing that I was being
Hmm.
mentored. And then I learned about the importance of like extracurricular activities. So I was like, okay, let me also dip my hands into like campus politics and things like that because it might help in my scholarships. They were telling me about that, and they would tell me about how, you would need reference letters when you're applying for these things. And it's not like it was in the news sometimes, because I do remember one of these lecturers who was complaining about an old student who visited him in his office asking for a reference letter, and he hasn't seen that, he didn't even remember who the student was. So it just clocked in my brain that, huh, if I'm gonna need this, then I might as well just start kissing the ass right now. You understand?
Yeah.
So and that was it, right? Interestingly, I tried as much as possible to maintain these relationships over time. Once every 3 months, I had like emails and phone numbers in my personal email where I just send messages and emails like, "Good day, sir. How you doing? Just checking up on you." Or try to engage as much as I can on their LinkedIn. So when I was getting to my PhD, it wasn't difficult getting a supervisor. It wasn't difficult getting things because my the supervisor, I had like three supervisors. I had three supervisors for my project. Third supervisor was a professor in one of the federal universities in Nigeria. And this is someone I've known for over 11 years. So he didn't even need to think too much. It was like, yes, yes, I'm okay, okay, I'm good. Do you need help with this? Do you need help with that? And it was like easy peasy for me because I had already maintained that relationship with them, with him rather. And there are several other people like that as well, like that were mentors, but not because I asked them to be mentors, but because I maintained that relationship
Mm,
with them. And then when I was getting interviewed for the PhD program, the CDT, the one of the panelists, she was so nice. She was so lovely. And I just put it in my mind as like, nope, this is the lady that I want to supervise me, right? And that we had no direct relationship. Like there was nothing to bring us together for the first year of my PhD because she was like in the management, she was like doing other things, right? And I was like doing pursuing bridging courses. But however, I took it upon myself to always check in, engage with her, talk to her about my ideas, just make myself stand out whenever I saw her and things like that. So when we had this period towards the end of my first year, when different supervisors were coming to talk about their projects, so that students would like join their labs. I went to meet her and I told her, I'm not understanding these projects I want to do here. You interviewed me. You remember what we talked about? This is what I want to do. And she was like, okay, let's do it. That was it. At the end of the day, she supported in getting another supervisor, the second supervisor to support in my project. And that's how I got three of them. And they've been instrumental to my growth being here. Essentially, because of I wouldn't want to say it's just because of me, but she's also a good person. She had this
mhm,
mindset of trying to make me like a mini her
mhm,
because she's also a very enthusiastic researcher. She got fellowships. Her career has been pretty fast. She's already like an associate professor, and I think she probably graduated maybe like 7 years ago, and she's
mhm,
going to be a professor by next year or so. So her career is very fast. So she's essentially like a template for me
mm.
when it comes to things like that.
Like you're saying, I think it's so important the how you highlighted not only maintaining the network, but also just being present in the network because so many people come because they want something from it. And I know to some degree you do there are, there is a time and a place where you sometimes do have to do the cold call, but there is also the ways that you can maintain that relationship, as you've clearly put it, uh, throughout your academic professional career. And equally, I always like the idea of feeding forward. I don't know which of my students that I've taught I'm
Mhm,
potentially going to work with in the future. I would
mhm,
hope I would work with some of them in the future because that is what I would like to see of their careers.
mhm.
So as a result, that's the start of potentially a collegial uh, conversation between them, and that's what you want to maintain. That's the
Yeah,
ambition you want. You want to feed forward, and yeah, I think it's a really good mindset that you've got, and clearly the academics who supported you so far have
yeah,
really done. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'd I'd love to know a bit more about your what impact you're hoping to achieve. So whether that's my guests normally take this as either their personal or their professional impact, and please take it however or answer both, whichever way you feel.
All right. When it comes to impact, I think I'm gonna answer it from both personal and professional perspective. Professionally, I'm trying to my aim is to like carve a niche for myself within when it comes to like cultural sensitive design for from an Afrocentric perspective. And so I am thinking about when I'm talking about making impact, it's like how can I make technologies more accessible? How can I make more technologies more culturally sensitive? How can I make them more unique to these Afrocentric contexts, in as much as, and then transferable to other contexts that have Africans inside, but are not necessarily Africa. You get what I mean?
Mhm.
So I want to, and by making impact, obviously. I'm thinking about or ensuring that I make publications. I'm like trying to publish as much as I can. Like for my PhD, for instance, attending conferences, opportunities that I have to attend conferences. Just the other, I think it was a week or so ago, it's up to 2 weeks now. I went to give a lecture at Oxford Uni, and essentially I was talking about cultural sensitive design of technologies. It was a very lovely lecture, and I knew that by just talking and I do a lot of deconstructive stuff. I do a lot of things to like challenge the ways people think. You understand? I do a lot of theoretical aspects of computer science as well. And because I have a very multidisciplinary background, and the students that I talk to are usually from different backgrounds as well, it's kind of like easy for me to like breach communication and navigate those experiences. And I'm confident that by having these invited talks, that's also me making an impact by having artifacts that I can, present at conferences. Just yeah, this was this year, April or May. I had the opportunity to attend the AI UK conference in
Mhm.
London. And there it was nice. We even had the Minister of is it AI technology? I'm not sure if I'm getting the title.
Possibly, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and she was there. It was amazing. I had the opportunity of having my a store, and showing this is what I did in my PhD, and a lot of people came to look at it. Sometimes I used to feel like, there's some people that are really doing like hardcore, extra really cool stuff, like you see
Mm.
robots and the whole like you understand? But I do know that they're making their impact, they're doing their things, but I'm also making my own contributions in my own way, right? Because I'm all about challenging current ways of designing technologies and challenging paradigms to research. And that's the professional aspects of things. Personally, I do know how there aren't so many people like me in this field when it comes to even getting the opportunity to pursue a PhD, for instance. So, and that's one of the reasons why, for instance, I created the TikTok account and
Mhm.
I'm like active on LinkedIn because I know that okay, in my free time, if I'm able to just talk about these things, share my experiences, share things that I know. I am someone who knows how to do a lot of shortcuts. I have a lot of tips and hacks. Sometimes I don't like to stress myself with a whole lot of things because I know that it's not about how much I'm not the kind of person that likes to overwork hard on one thing. Like, how can I make this more effective with the least stressful way, right?
Mm.
And if I'm talking about these things on my TikTok as well, is also my way of saying that okay, I'm making impacts on a personal level. Some people reach out to me in person, when I go for talks, attend talks, social media, and just knowing that oh, I can give this person advice on a personal level, and yeah, that's me making impact. I have one person that I have taken upon myself to mentor.
Mhm.
And that's also me knowing that, okay, yeah, I'm making an impact because the same way, these opportunities were available for me, is how I want to contribute to other people's lives. You understand? So
Big
it's still a
time.
work in progress. There's a lot of things that I'm still like figuring out. I don't even know what I'm doing, but that's the entire idea up there.
No, I very much feel the same way. I One thing I loved about the PhD experience is the whole spinning plates analogy. You're wearing so many different hats, and that's the best way of doing it. If you are purely real research, purely pursuing that pathway, you can really have a great project, but you are so much more than just your project, and it's how you do the various different things. And well, like you were saying about the outreach work that you've done with your TikTok, that's how I found what you've been posting, and equally found it so interesting to see the post PhD experience from a research fellow perspective because it's not horrendously clear, especially for people who are first generation to see that
Mhm.
and to see what are some of the terms that are used, how do you get funding, how do you articulate what research you're looking for, the difference between research fellows that are finding their own research and funding their own projects, or someone who is doing a research associate role, which equally valid but very different pathway in itself.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And I'm happy you were able to see the videos and you like them. There's still a bunch of things that I hope to share. And the interesting thing is, while my supervisors have been very helpful and her career is like the template, a lot of these things has also been trial and error for me. I did not know the difference between a research associate or postdoc role, and from a fellowship up until like last year. I'm seeing like, and so just learning from my mistakes and knowing that, like, for example, before I got this fellowship, I attended probably 4 or 5 interviews. So I already know the kind of questions they're going to ask, and I've gotten better over, like, I just know, you understand? And
Hmm.
those are tips that I intend on sharing, knowing how, post PhD, you don't want to fall into that postdoc trap where you're just doing a postdoc upon postdoc upon postdoc.
Hmm.
How do you know you can prove your independence? I don't know the answers for some of these things, but right now, knowing that I have both a postdoc and a fellowship, I'm confident that by the end of next year, I would have, answers to some of these things and be able
Hmm.
to share that, okay, this is how my experience has influenced the next stage of my career.
Now, I think that's really important because I think it's surprising to think there are so many people who want to go into academia, but the pool gets increasingly smaller
Exactly.
the further you go, and there is less turnover in academia, plus more redundancies, all of things to contribute to an imperfect storm that
Yes.
is
Yeah.
academia. So, thinking about either your research or what you do generally, what is it that really gets you out of bed in the morning and what excites you about what you do?
God, what excites me? I think just the fear of failure, honestly, fear of failure. This has nothing to do with being a researcher, honestly. When I think about where I'm coming from, I don't want to go back
Mm,
there. You understand what I mean? When you think about where you're coming from and how far you've gone, and you look back and you still see some people where you left them,
mm,
and you know that if you stop going, there is nobody to help you. You just got to keep going. So I want to say maybe fear of failure is what's
mm,
motivating me right now. And generally, I'm doing something that I love. So it's not stressful for me to wake up in the morning. Academia gives you that I mean, it doesn't pay that much, but you
true.
get this sense of freedom and independence in a way.
Hmm.
And it's compared to a 9 to 5. I've had 9 to 5s. I had part-time jobs all for my PhD.
Yeah, yeah, been there
Yeah.
myself.
So, knowing that every day it could be a new challenge. I'm working on something that I love. I have the flexibility of working from home. If I want to go to uni, I can do that. It's not, I don't have to think too much about anything.
Hmm. Yeah, like you say, I think academia has a fair amount of warts, like any profession, but it definitely has a lot of pros that I think are often overlooked. The flexibility and I would say the trust as well to some degree. You are given, especially in independent research, you are given a lot of rope to do various different things with. You can do bits of teaching, you can do bits of outreach, you can do bits of research, and they have the confidence to say, just go and do it. So long
Exactly.
as you show something for
Ex-
it, they're more than happy to trust you for it.
Exactly. Exactly. And you can't exactly get that in the standard 9 to 5. So
No, you can't. No, and definitely not a part-time job.
yeah, definitely not a part-time job. Yeah.
Tim, this is just the perfect time to segue into the rapid fire questions, which are the telling your story in 10 words or less.
Hmm.
So, to start off with, who is a character or individual that you admired?
Can I say James Bond?
You can say James Bond.
James Bond definitely overcomes everything. Challenges is that more than 10 words already? James
Uh,
Bond.
no, you just said challenges everything in James Bond, so that's, yeah, you've
Yeah,
still got a
definitely.
few words.
Yeah, he overcomes every challenge. So it's James Bond. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, next question is, what is the life lesson that has stuck with you?
Be humble. Be humble. Yeah. That's a life
Okay,
lesson that stuck with me. Be humble. I'm trying not to say more than 10 words because I can be quite verbose, but let's keep it as like that. Be humble. Yeah.
perfect. And what was a subject that you had previously dismissed in school that you wished you did more now that and now you perhaps do use it more?
That subject would have to be statistics. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think every academic has been there.
Yeah.
And what is the most recent book that you've read?
Ah, that's true. That will be Essentials in Pharmacology
Okay.
by Katie Tripathi.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you had a theme song, what would it be?
Arise up again. I don't know the lyrics, but yeah,
I get the gist, yeah.
yeah, that'll be it.
And what is the favorite thing that you've taken from your academic journey all the way to where you are today?
The fact that I can be independent, for instance, attend conferences. So that independence, yeah, all through.
And the worst thing about your academic experience?
It's a lonely experience. It's a lonely one. Yeah.
Interesting contrast. You could argue they are literally the same, in some ways the same thing, but complete parallels in others. Interesting. You'll have to expand on that in a later point.
Yeah, it's all right.
So, how would you like to be seen by other people?
I don't really care.
If you had a do-over with your career, what would you do instead?
I will study medicine and practice as a surgeon.
And if you were giving advice to a student who is just starting out, I'll let you pick whatever stage.
Mhm.
What would it be?
Don't put yourself in a box. Feel free to leave and make mistakes.
And that is the 10 rapid fire questions. So thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you so much, Jordan.
And now, one of the things I always like to encourage my guests to do, you've already reflected, I would say, a lot on your academic heritage.
hmm
So, as a result, I'd be really interested to know how you've been shaped by your personal heritage.
Mm. Um, yeah, my personal heritage. Okay, this is getting personal. All right, so hmm. I grew up kind of like an average middle, income earning household. My parents are educated, right? So there was always that thing of going to school, like it was imbibed, deeply ingrained in us. And I think one thing I have to say is just looking at my parents, especially my dad, I knew what I didn't want to be. Because being someone who was good in a lot of things in secondary school, in high school, at some point while I was thinking about medicine a lot, I was thinking about should I be an accountant? Should I be this? My dad is an accountant
Mhm.
and he make a lot of money. And I was like, hell no, no, I'm not doing that. Likewise, my mom was in the social sciences and
Mhm.
didn't make any money. So I was like, me and social sciences, never. I'm going to where the money was, right? And I would say, okay, that's one thing and they were really supportive, really, essentially, really supportive of my academic dreams and stuff like that. My dad used to motivate me in primary school. Like, if you get first class, not first class, if you get like first in class, like
Mhm.
you're the best in class, I'm gonna like buy you a bicycle or buy you
Mhm.
this or buy you that. And he did that every year, but never got me anything. But it always worked because at the end of the term, I would be celebrated and called out and giving gifts or clapped. Everyone just gives me like a standing ovation and things like that. So that's something that was also good. I came from a pretty religious background as well.
Mhm.
So there was the thing of how has that even influenced my career I think to an extent it made me hold back on the whole lot, on a lot of
Mhm.
things because I was always thinking about the what ifs. I
Mhm.
did not necessarily outside academia, I did not see any person I could look up to and be like, I want
Mhm.
to be like that. Instead, it kind of I always felt like, oh, I can't do what I'm seeing on TV or mostly TV because I didn't have like social media and phones like that,
Mhm.
right? And so how that also influenced me was that I feel like I did hold back on a lot of stuff. I held back on a lot. There was a lot that I thought I wasn't capable of. Um, I didn't even know that I could, bridge into the social sciences and then bridge into computer science. I didn't know any of these things because I didn't have anyone to look up to outside the academics I was liaising with in uni. I grew up in a community where a lot of people don't go to school.
Mhm.
They don't go to school. Some people right now, ladies that like got pregnant and having like 5 kids at very young ages. Some people are not alive anymore.
Mhm.
So that was the kind of community that I grew up in. But my parents kind of like shielded me and my siblings. So I would have to say thank them for that.
Mhm.
And my dad would always say he wants us to be better than him. And
Mhm.
currently he's pursuing a PhD as well. So I want to say that, okay, I've inspired him on that front. But yeah, I don't really have much to say, about my personal experiences. I think I'm pretty much a private person because there's a whole lot of things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I get that. And like you say, I do think the representation point is a good one because the fact that one, for people who haven't necessarily got that, they're on from a what I would class as a legacy background where they have parents who've done PhDs, grandparents who've done PhDs, like in some cases. You don't have that, not necessarily even the role model, but you don't know what it looks like.
Exactly.
Like, I know what a lecturer is. I don't know how to get to it, but I know what a lecturer is.
Mhm,
I know what PhD means, doctor.
mhm,
But outside of that, what is it? When similar to yourself, interdisciplinary research. I'm a biologist who has done a bit in the social sciences. My PhD is my real step into the social sciences,
mhm,
and then equally, I've still done my best to keep my agricultural science, which is my core science, going.
mhm,
So I completely feel what you're coming from, where you're coming from with that, and I do think the representation is a key thing that is often overlooked. My entire PhD project really is highlighted that just how impactful a lack of that can be,
mhm,
not just for based on ethnicity, but based on if someone is from a neurodiverse, neurotypical background, uh, other elements of social economic class, all of which can have an impact. And
mhm.
if you don't feel seen, you don't thrive in that environment.
Exactly. Exactly.
So speaking of look, the environment that as academics we potentially want to make,
Mhm,
if you were given the rare thing that never happens in academia, it will never happen, but where we get given a magic money tree that we've managed to cultivate and grow, split or allocate your resources in outreach, teaching, and research. How would you split it either? You can give it a monetary value, you can give it a percentage value. How would you
mhm.
split your time?
Definitely 60% research because I'm a very curious person. I like to ask a lot of questions. And investing in that also means investing in other people because, like research assistants, other people that make research happen. 30% for teaching because I love to talk and I'm confident that talking is one way of, impacting people and also learning. Because one thing I realized myself is even when I read and read, when I talk about it, it reinforces what I know. Like I do not forget those things. So it also helps me in a way. Outreach is nice. But as extroverted as I sound, I'm not necessarily someone who likes to be everywhere all the time.
Mm.
I get overwhelmed. So 10% would be for outreach.
I suppose as we get towards the end of this segment, one of the things I want to ask you is what question would you ask the next content educator about their research or their content impact? And that'll be for my next guest.
Hmm. What do you aim to achieve with your channel?
Previous guest's question for you
Hmm?
is what personality traits do you think are important to have for your career success?
Hmm. Personality traits. Two things, right? And this is really subjective. The first would be being a curious person. I don't know if there's a curious personality trait, but I do know that curiosity is necessary if you want to be a scholar or an academic of anybody. You should be asking questions. You should be curious about something, right? And it's the curiosity that fits that enthusiasm because you would want to answer or address questions based on that. The second thing would be I'm gonna get bashed for this, but being let me frame it like being selectively extroverted, which might go against the natural personality of a person. I mean, some people are introverts, some people, different people, different strokes for different folks. But I do know that one thing that different has differentiated me from some other academics and even getting roles, not because I am the best per se, but because I know how to, my supervisors will all talk about like humble bragging. My supervisors
Hmm.
will also talk about, walking and talking like, you know what you're doing, even when you don't know how to. As there's this thing about academics in general, even how it's portrayed on TV, where we're nerds and socially awkward and you can't relate to people and being unable to communicate both on an
Hmm.
academic level, on a personal level, kind of like interferes with your ability to make an impact in any way. So I would always say selectively introvert, extroverted. You can be an introvert, but when it comes to, you have to make that presentation, you just gotta work on that aspect of
Hmm.
being able to be socialized to an extent.
No, I get that, and the two things from that that really resonate with me is one is a bit of the lobster analogy that comes up that you need to put yourself in a certain amount of stress. I'm not sure about yourself. I would naturally class myself as an introvert as well.
Mhm,
Social media is something I do because I feel like it needs to be done, but
mhm,
the reason for doing it is also made me a lot better at communicating in my day job,
mhm.
and it's helped me leaps and bounds better than doing a how-to course on public speaking that just go out and do it type
Yeah,
thing. It will you learn more from your failures than you do from a textbook or anything on that. And I would say the other thing, the point about the humble bragging, the thing that I always think that you can tell when you go into a room where being prepared to listen after you've introduced yourself, not being this is my research. This is why I'm the best. You aren't trying to outcompete everyone in the room. Be prepared to take that step back, which I think is what uh, you're implying with the humble bragging, where you are just as equally happy to listen as you are to talk.
exactly, exactly. And this also plays a role in how you write your cover letters and how you answer questions in interviews from my own experience. Because you it might I think my supervisors did a pretty good job because I had a lot of what do you call it? Practice interviews with them, mock interviews and things like that. And they're like, you're answering the questions the right way, but I don't feel your impact.
Mm,
So sometimes we have that tendency to want to, and it comes with imposter syndrome, which a lot of us have experienced, and I still deal with it, where it's like,
mm.
oh my gosh, should I even really talk about this? You have 8 publications. Say you have 8 publications, but there's a way you say it so it doesn't look like you're rubbing it in the face. Do you understand? But at the same time, you can get that feedback that, okay, maybe you should have done this instead. So it's just navigating, as you said, being able to listen and empathize with others, but also making sure that you can shine as an academic as well.
Yeah, I think, like you say, I think I've gone through interviews myself, and you want to lean in to say, we have done this. My team have done this. This is what we achieved. And sometimes they're looking, but what did you do? And you're doing that because you don't want to come off big-headed. And that's realistically, you know what you've done. You know some of your stats, but you feel reluctant to share it when that's literally in that particular situation, that's the only thing they're really asking for.
Exactly.
But yeah. Just because we've got a little bit of time left for another sneaky question, Tim, is if you had to go and pick a completely new field of study,
hmm
not a subject that you know already, you were
hmm
changing your research focus, not a little bit, but completely, what would
hmm
it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. What would I probably wow. This I probably would go. I probably would go study theater arts.
Hmm.
Yeah. This is like a total, like totally different because I do know that maybe it's my personality or stuff, but when I'm listening to music and
Hmm.
watching TV, sometimes I imagine myself, on stage and all of those kind of things. And then I look at all the celebrities, they're like 14 years old and 16 years old, and I'm like, damn, that could have been me. You know, I'm here, I have a PhD, I don't have any money, but stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I probably would have done that. Like just
Hmm.
gone into theater. I probably maybe not even have, you know, gone through the traditional uni college route. Probably looked for a specialization institution, maybe like gone to Juilliard or something like that, where it's
Hmm.
okay, you're here for drama. It's not necessarily Harvard, but everyone who finishes from this institution is known for something like that. So that's
Hmm.
probably what I would have done.
Okay. No. And Tim, that does bring me to the end of this episode of Sitting Down with Scholars. So, as I do with all my guests, if someone would like to find out more about what you do and potentially connect with you for advice, guidance, or just to follow along for the ride,
Mhm.
where could they find you?
Okay, you can find me on TikTok at Tis Dr. Tim. You just type Dr. Tim, I'm gonna pop up. Or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is still Dr. Tim. And on Instagram is Dr. Tim double underscore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tim. And thank you ever so much for joining me and sharing your academic journey with
Mhm.
me and my guests.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.